Hey friends, Elizabeth here from Plant-Based Bride, and I'm back again with another bullet journal video. This time I am setting up November in my husband's bullet journal. And after last month when I set up Jason's October bullet journal with a 70s theme, I got such a positive reaction from all of you. It honestly made me so happy to see that you all were very open to seeing a different type of setup. So I knew I had to continue with that, and I'm really excited to bring you his November setup, which is, of course, a Star Trek theme. If you know us in real life, you know we are Star Trek obsessed. Seriously obsessed. We have watched literally every Star Trek episode and movie that exists. So there's that. So I knew that at some point I would be doing a Star Trek theme. I just didn't know it was going to be in Jason's bullet journal instead of mine. So I'm a little jealous that he gets to do it first, but I'm sure at some point I will do my own Star Trek theme as well. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, even if your mug isn't quite as awesome as mine. Grab your bullet journal and let's get planning. So this month I'm starting off by doing a watercolor painting for the cover page. If you personally are not interested in watercolor, feel free to skip to the next section of the planning. I will leave a timestamp in the first comment down in the comment section below this video so that you can skip right to that and not watch the watercolor. For those of you who are interested in the watercolor, a quick disclaimer as always, I am very new to watercolor, so take any of my advice with a grain of salt. It is just my experience working with watercolors for a few months now, and a lot of what I've learned from watching other people's videos on YouTube about watercolor. So with that, let's jump right into it. So I am using this Strathmore watercolor paper. It is a 140-pound cold pressed paper, and it's 6x9. So I just ripped out one of those pages and taped it down to my desk using washi tape just to keep the paper very still and also to try to reduce warping of the page a little bit. It is preferable to use painter's tape for this, but I didn't have any, so washi tape will do. So before the video, I had sketched out this shape. This is the shape of the communicator badge on Star Trek. If you are not a Star Trek fan, that's what this shape is. It's pretty instantly recognizable from anyone who has watched Star Trek. So I just started by wetting the inner section so that the inside was wet and the outer part of the paper was dry, and started to paint. I wanted the inner section to look like a nebula. There are a few very bright pink nebulas in Star Trek. There's one in particular that I'm remembering. I think it was from Next Generation, or possibly I'm mixing that up with one from Enterprise. But either way, there was this very pink and purple nebula that I distinctly remember, and I was basing this center part of the painting off of that nebula. So I started off with a lot of pink, added quite a bit of this light purpley blue, a little bit of a teal blue, and just kept applying these. And the concept is that the base is wet, the paper is wet, and also my brush is wet. So when I apply the paint, it kind of spreads out on its own and creates interesting shapes and patterns, which really contribute to this sort of galaxy nebula effect. So now I'm doing the exact same thing on the outside of the paper. I'm just wetting the paper using a clean brush, and I'm going in with the color. Now for the outside, I wanted it to read more green and yellow based. I started off adding quite a bit of green and the teal blue and a little bit of the purpley blue just to have a little bit of cohesiveness between the center and the outside of the painting. I didn't want to just do completely different colors and have it feel like they weren't part of the same universe. But I did go in with quite a bit of green and yellow after this first laydown of color. So overall, it is going to read more yellow or green, but I always think it's a good idea to try to have a little bit more cohesiveness between different parts of a painting. For this, I'm using my Winsor & Newton watercolor palette. This has 12 colors in it. And this is what I'm using for all of the painting in the video, except for the white highlights for the stars. So now the center part has dried, and I decided to move back in to add a little more vibrancy to that center nebula. I added a little bit of purple along the left side and a little bit along the right, added a tiny bit more pink, and just blended everything together a little bit more. And I just keep going in with more colors and kind of playing around, blending them together. Sometimes I'll wet my brush and apply it in between two colors just to blend them a little more together without adding any more pigment. And sometimes I'll go in and grab more pigment without adding more water so that it will be a little darker and more vibrant. Once I was happy with that, I left that to dry again and wet that lower center part of the outside of the paper and went in with a bunch of yellow. Really wanted to add a lot of that yellow feel, and along with a little bit more of this sort of olivey green. Of course, I'm still adding in some of this teal blue and some of this more forest green as well to really tie everything together. Now comes the most time-consuming part of this entire painting, which was really darkening up the outer edges of the painting so that it looked like we were coming into a nebula from the depths of space, essentially. So this outer part was actually based off of the wormhole in Deep Space Nine. If you are a Star Trek fan, it just always had this feeling that they were going down a deep tunnel, and that's kind of the impression I wanted. So I wanted the outside to be as dark as possible, ideally fully black, and then the center to be this lighter yellowy green kind of feel, so it looked like we were going through this wormhole. And then obviously the center part is the pink nebula. So that was kind of the vibe I was going for there. And because I wanted it to be so dark, I went in and added layer after layer after layer of this Payne's gray, which is a very dark gray. And you can see in between shots, when it dries, it gets a lot lighter. And so I have to go in again and darken it up again. I tried to use not a lot of water and a lot of pigment to try to add as much depth of color as possible. I wanted to take a little bit of a break from the border and decided to work on the border of the communicator. So for this, I grabbed my smaller brush of my two brushes. This is more of a detail brush. And then I grabbed pigment with almost no water on a dry surface to really sketch out a fine line along the edge. And I tried to swap colors as I went along so that the outer border would match what was happening on the inside of the communicator. So as you can see, I'm doing a pink border around the pink sections, blue around the blue sections, purple around the purple, and then adding a little bit more water to the brush to try to blend the border out into the center of that part of the painting. So applying it relatively dry on dry paper on the border in a very fine line, and then using a little bit more water on the brush and no extra pigment to blend that line inwards. And I'm sorry that my hair gets in the shot a couple times here. I was really leaning in to make sure I was getting a precise line. Once I was happy with that, it was back in with the larger brush and my Payne's gray. Again, this was definitely the most time-consuming part of the process. I have seen some people use other types of paint instead of watercolor paint to get a darker look. I don't have any other types of paint, so that wasn't really an option for me. And I was interested in playing with how to get a really dark black look using watercolor, because that's something I haven't done yet. So for me, it was kind of a fun experiment, and I was willing to put the time in to get the look I was going for. As I go along, I'm adding lots of pigment along the outside and then really blending it out with quite a bit of water. So ideally, it will look like it's blending into the colorful part of the inside instead of being a solid black border. I used quite a bit of water at this stage, and I could definitely tell the paper was warping a little bit, but I do think the fact that I taped it down was helping with that. So you can see it has dried again and gotten quite a bit lighter. So again, going in with more pigment with a little less water to really fill in that section. This process probably would have been sped up if I had a larger brush than this one, but as I explained in my first watercolor video, I only purchased 2 brushes as I got started, and so far I haven't felt the need to get another one. But if you had a larger brush, it would probably make the process go by faster. Now I'm happy with the result and I'm ready for stars. So I'm grabbing my Winsor & Newton gouache, and I am taking my larger brush and dipping it into the gouache and then tapping it with my finger above the painting so that I will spray little white dots all over that will look like stars. And again, I just kept doing this over and over until I felt like I had enough. Then I wanted to add a couple accent stars, so I went in with my tiny little detail brush and grabbed some gouache, and then I drew lines radiating out from a little dot to give a larger star effect. I did 2 on the outside border. Unfortunately, I cut off the bottom one. You can't see it in the shot. I didn't realize. And I also did 2 larger ones on the center part of the painting. Once I was happy with that, it was time for the final aspect of this painting, which was drawing the silhouette of the Enterprise on the center pink nebula. So I grabbed my Picket Circle Master template, which I talked about in my November bullet journal setup. That was my bullet journal, the pop art theme. So I grabbed that same one and used a medium-sized circle, traced it and filled it in, and then I used my ruler to draw out the rest of the Enterprise. And once I was happy with that, I peeled off the tape and my painting was finished. Now I'm going to use that as the cover page, but I'm going to do something a little different with it. So we're going to move on for now. Welcome back to all of you who skipped the watercolor section. How's it going? Let's get started on the planning. So again, I am just going to be doing a monthly spread and weekly spreads for my husband. If you want to know a little bit more about why he's starting a bullet journal and what he's using it for, feel free to check out the first video I made for him. I will link it in the cards and in the description box. Keeping this setup pretty simple, I just drew out the calendar with 6x6 boxes, and then I just drew a tiny little section of a control panel from the bridge of the Enterprise. These look like faders, which Jason loves because he is a sound engineer and he uses faders in his day-to-day life. So this was a fun aspect to include. And I just colored in the faders with a bright true red with my Tombow brush pen. This is the shade 856. As always, every supply I use will be in the description box below, so you can check it out. And this true red is to represent the red uniforms we see on Star Trek, which are for engineering personnel in the original series, and then for the command track after that. Now I'm just writing out the title in the classic original series Star Trek font. This took quite a while to do, so I skipped ahead a little bit because I was trying to use a ruler for almost every part of it to keep it as geometric as possible, so it did take a little bit of time. Later on in the video, I kind of abandoned the ruler and just try to do it freehand, which doesn't look quite as crisp, but is definitely faster. I then just used the same red Tombow brush pen to highlight the top section where I wrote the days of the week, just to add a little more interest. Now I'm moving on to the weekly spread. As I said before, this is the same setup we used last month. He's really been liking it. If you want a more detailed explanation of why this weekly looks the way it does, what it's for, feel free to check out that video. I just wrote week 1 and the dates of the week along the left side and then notes on the right side. Then I set up each day of the week on that left side of the page with the income tracker for every single day and just highlighted it with this light blue. This is the Tombow brush pen in the color 533, and this is to represent the science officers. I did the same for every single week, alternating between the blue and the yellow, which is 993, just to give a little bit interest and to make sure I included all 3 of the uniform colors from Star Trek. And along the right side at the bottom of each weekly, I added a little drawing from Star Trek. So we have the first one, which is a side-on silhouette of the Enterprise flying over a planet. We have the second one, which is a little Borg. I always think of this as being Hugh because that episode with Hugh in Next Gen was just such a good episode. Anyway, next up we have the Vulcan hand symbol for live long and prosper. And then on the final spread there, I just have the classic Star Trek communicator badge insignia. Once I had my weekly set up, I went back to the cover page, and this was the fun little project for this video. I didn't want to just glue in the watercolor painting because I knew it would make the page very solid. I also would have had to cut off the edges of the painting to fit it into Jason's bullet journal. So I thought a better solution would be to scan it into my computer and then print it out on regular printer paper so that it wouldn't make the page too much thicker, and I could also resize it a little so it would fit. So I scanned it, I put it in Photoshop and just boosted the colors to make sure that they were accurate to real life, and then reprinted them. Even with the boosting, it printed a little duller than it is on the actual painting because my printer isn't incredible quality. It's a pretty old printer, so the colors aren't quite as vibrant, but I did my best to get them close. I also sized it down a tiny bit so that it would fit on the page, and then just cut it out and glued it in. And this way I was able to give Jason the original painting so that he can have it, put it up in his office if he likes. It's propped up in there against his monitors right now. And also, because it's now digital, I could send it to him and he made it the background of his phone. So I think he likes it or something. This is also a great solution for what some of you have been asking me about recently since I started using more different types of media in my bullet journal. I've had quite a few questions about if it makes my journal thicker and if it makes the pages harder to turn or just makes my bullet journal in general feel bulkier. It definitely does add a little bit of thickness to the pages. It definitely can make them stiffer. I don't personally mind, but if that is something that bothers you, I highly recommend, if you're going to create some sort of art, to scan it and print it on regular thin printer paper and glue it in that way. And it's also nice, like I just said, because you have that original artwork if you want it for whatever reason, and you don't have to worry about losing your bullet journal and also losing all of your original art. Jason was worried he would spill coffee on his bullet journal and ruin it, and now he doesn't have to worry about that because the version of it in his bullet journal is just a print and not the original. So the other awesome benefit of having this digital is that I can offer it to you as a download. So if you like this painting, if you would like to have a digital copy of it to do with as you will, if you want to put it up in your wall, if you want to put it in your bullet journal, or just have it as a digital copy, use it as the background of your phone so you can be twins with my husband, whatever you want, go check out my Patreon. It is available as one of this month's rewards for the $3 tier. So if you sign up to support me with $3 a month, you get a bunch of different benefits, and one of them will be the download of this printable, and you actually get a download of a new printable every single month. So go check it out if you're interested in that. There are also a couple more tiers with different benefits, which you should definitely go check out if you're interested, including discounts on my Teespring merch, which my US viewers may already see below my videos. Unfortunately, this feature of seeing my Teespring merch below my videos is only currently available to US viewers, which means even I can't see it, but I have heard that it's up there. So if you like either of the mugs I've designed or the sticker that is up there and you'd like a discount, check out my Patreon because 2 of the tiers have discounts on my Teespring merch. And I also have an extra special bonus video that I'm aiming to get up on Sunday if my computer can handle all of this intense editing. And that video is a bonus video showing how I designed the Bullet Babe Teespring mug and sticker based off of one of your suggestions, one of you that follow me on Instagram. So if you're interested in hearing a bit more about Teespring and my merch and seeing the designs and seeing how I actually went about designing one of the mugs and stickers, go check it out. That video will be up in a few days and I'll link it as soon as it's live. And that is it for this video. I have rambled on for quite a while. I'm gonna have a lot of editing to do on this voiceover. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you'll have a chance to enter next month's giveaway. And please let me know in the comments below if you are a Star Trek fan. And if so, which series is your favorite and who's your favorite character? My favorite series is either Next Gen or DS9. And my favorite character of all time would be very, very difficult to say. I think if I had to say one off the top of my head, it would be Data, but I have a lot of favorite characters. And Jason's favorite series is DS9, and I'm not sure who his favorite character is if he had to pick just one. I guess I'm gonna have to ask him and let you know in the comments what he says. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. I hope you enjoyed my nerdiness and all of the nerdy things I have. The props in this video weren't even all of the Star Trek stuff we have in our house, so there's that. And I will see you very soon in next week's video. Actually, in the bonus video that's coming before next week. So many videos. All right, see you later. Bye, friends.